Hey y'all, it's Andrea. Today, Geordi shoots his shot and misses by a light year. We break down the idea of space mummies and we ask the question, were Geordi's actions justifiable? Stay with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're breaking down Season 3, Episode 6 already, entitled Booby Trap.
What? How did that happen?
I know, right? Already.
I feel like, I was talking to a coworker of ours just the other day, and she was saying, like, which season are you on? I read a bunch of stuff online that season 1 and 2 are not good of TNG, so I just started on season 3. And as I'm watching it, I keep thinking to myself, I wonder what Shereese and Andrea want to say about this episode. And I was like, funny you should ask, because we're on season 3. And it's like you blinked and we're there, which is so great because seasons 1 and 2 were a bit painful. And this so far, like every single episode, even if they haven't been great, they have all been good. Mm-hmm. Like none of them have been bad. And I'm just
really good. Like super strong.
Yeah, delighted.
So strong. Well, this episode, Booby Trap, was written by 3 writers, Ron Roman, Michael Piller, and Richard Dennis, and directed by the first female director of all of Star Trek, Gabrielle Beaumont. So, snaps to Gabrielle Beaumont. And this episode fucking rocks. So, yay!
Yeah, it's cool.
It's star date 43205.6. When the Enterprise is trapped in a futuristic minefield, which rapidly drains the ship's power, Geordi must devise a means of escape. He enlists the holographic help of the ship's designer, Dr. Leah Brahms, by recreating her and the Enterprise Design Lab so they can devise a means to navigate the ship to safety. We have been talking off and on and referencing Leah Brahms, and this is the first of 2 times we actually see her. And when I saw that this was the Leah Brahms episode, I was like, it's so
Me
good.
too. And you know what's so funny? As I watched this, so we're going to go beat by beat through the episode, but once we got to the resolution at the end, I was like, you know what? I don't remember what this episode was about at all, except for the Leah Brahms Geordi relationship. That's all I remembered. I remember there was some kind of thing going on and he needed help. And so he created her, but I didn't remember the context. I just remember the relationship and this episode. And then the subsequent episode with Leah Brahms. And like, that was just so fun to watch. Like, I just enjoyed that so much. And I feel like this is the first time we get an episode that's Geordi heavy. And really satisfying because the last time we had Geordi, kind of a Geordi heavy episode, I feel like was back in season 1 when he took over as chief engineer. And I think he was taking over when he had to take over the ship and decide how to rescue the away team from the planet. And there was that other guy who was being a total dick and was like, I have more seniority. I should do this job and not you and all that stuff. And that was like a Geordi heavy episode, but you kind of, I feel like we didn't get a lot of character development, but this one you see like what he's like personally, what he's like romantically, and it's like so satisfying.
This episode, and also next week's episode too, are really Geordi heavy, which I love. And these episodes in these seasons are all about that character development. So it's not, it's so juicy. I love this episode. Before we really get into the beat by beat though, Shereese, do you have any initial thoughts?
Not other than what I've said. How about you?
I just thought in my notes, I wrote in all caps, this right here is great science fiction. There's no viruses. There's no sexing all over the ship. It's just good old fashioned. The Enterprise fell into a trap and Geordi has to science them out. I fucking love that. I love it. And I really, this episode specifically really made me rethink, Captain Picard is obviously my favorite character of the crew, but I think Geordi is a really, really close second because for a number of reasons. One, he's constantly saving the Enterprise like at the last effing second, like he's just using his brain all the time, which I love. And also having done some reading that LeVar Burton had so much difficulty with his lines, especially in these seasons that were really kicking up the sciencey, mumbo jumbo talk into high gear. LeVar Burton's like, I'm not a scientist. I wasn't an engineer. I just had to like say these words in rapid succession, usually like moments before the Enterprise's certain doom, and you have to spit out with like great, effort, like these lines that are just so sciencey. And he said, I can't tell you how many like billions of takes I had to do to get them right. So I was like, major snaps to LeVar Burton.
100% worth it. And he's not the first Trek actor I've heard say something like that the technobabble was very challenging for them. But I just have to say to all the Trek actors, I don't care how many takes it took, it came out beautifully. Like I never feel, I never see anyone stumble on their lines. So that 117th time you said it, you nailed it. because from my perspective, it just, I buy it all. I'm just like, sure. Yep.
It's completely like realistic for the Trek world. Where it's like, yep. Okay. And we're going to realign the dilithium antimatter chamber. Okay. Yeah, no, that all checks out. All right. But maybe not such an awesome moment is where this episode starts, where could be possibly the most cringeworthy date of the 24th century.
I agree. So let's go ahead and give Geordi that award. It may be taken away in subsequent episodes, but right now Geordi gets the award for the most cringeworthy date. I was watching this scene and I just was like, oh, he's not reading the body language. He's not reading the facial expression, the lack of conversation. She doesn't want another drink. And he's like, I know what's going to fix this. Let's have some guy play music in the background. That's going to make it really romantic. So what did you picture, Geordi? Did you think that she was going to be like, oh, wow, I love this song and just start making out with you while some guys like playing over your head? Like,
yes. I mean, first of all, he is so awkwardly trying to like scoot in closer. So setting the scene,
an awkward scoot right there.
They're on a beach. Yes, it was. They're on a beach on a date in the holodeck, and he's trying to offer her another cocktail in a coconut, and it's called the Coco No-No. And I was like, oh, the naming was a no-no right off the bat. But I was like, okay, whatever. So she's like, no, I think I've had enough. And then he does the most awkward scooch in the history of the universe. And it was just terrible. And this woman is like, I don't really want, like, and I just thought Geordi is being a classic 24th century man and not reading the signs, even remotely. Yes. And then he conjures into the holodeck a musician to play them the Hungarian dance number 5, which is what it's called. It's a very well-known classical piece, but she is like, I don't really at that point, Geordi, you stop. You just stop. Don't try to put your arm around her shoulder.
So he awkwardly tries to put his arm around her shoulder, and the second it lands down on her shoulder, the second it touches down, she's like, you know what? I think I should go. And he's like, well, I mean, is it too cold? Do you want me to change the environmental settings? And it's like, really? That's what you think the problem is that the environmental settings? Well, I guess, hope springs eternal, right? And she's just like, all right, we need to just bring this to a close. Let me just tell you, buddy, this thing is not working. Like, you're a great guy, but I'm just not into you, which I feel like maybe she could have shared after the first Coco No-No, because they had like 4 of them. But whatever. Maybe she was.
Yeah. There were multiple coconut husks.
Maybe she was very, very thirsty. But I feel like you would need to get to the 4th one to be like, like if you had 4 drinks and you're still not into them, you're not into them. Like even your drunk self is not into them.
You're absolutely not into them. That's a great point. So you're absolutely not into them.
Absolutely not. If you were wondering, now you know. And then Geordi's just like, all right. Like the way he responds, I thought he took rejection like a pro, actually. And it also made me kind of sad because it's like, you could tell he's experienced this so often that he's just like, yep. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. The minute she says, Geordi, I think you're a great guy. And he goes, okay.
Yep.
Here we go. Yeah.
You
I've been on
this ride before. Him finishing her
sentences,
right? You could almost hear him being like, it's not you, it's me. Like, just so heartbreaking.
Poor Geordi. I know, absolutely. So the next scene, though, quickly cuts to Data and Wesley are playing space chess.
Is this the first time we see that cool layered set, or did we see it before?
No, we saw it in the season 1 finale, where the 20th century humans are brought back, and the space cocaine cowboy is playing 3D chess. Although, how the hell would he know how to play that game? We know how to play it if we don't know how. But whatever. So they're playing 3D space chess. I want to develop this into a game that actually has rules and stuff. Although we talked about, I can't even do regular chess. So maybe I'm reaching a little bit too far.
Maybe you and I can invent space checkers. You and I could definitely manage to do.
Right?
Play that game. We can figure that out.
We can. He's so great. And it's just, guess what? Spoiler alert, it's just regular checkers, and we're not even that good at that either. But here's something I love. They are surrounded outside of 10 forward. You can see this stunning asteroid field. And I don't know how they created this with CGI or whatever, but they did a fucking spectacular job. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. It was amazing. It looked so gorgeous. I would have just been standing at the windows of 10 forward, just like staring out agog.
100%.
Yeah, and
100%. I think this scene was one of the most beautiful scenes I've seen in all of Trek so far.
Agreed.
Next to the only thing I would put above this is the episode with the stupid egg, where we had the two neutron stars, and there was like the red star and the blue star, and it was like all swirly. That was stunning and gorgeous. But this one I would put as a close second because yes, the asteroid field looked amazing. First of all, I mean, it was just stunning seeing it through the windows and seeing how they were kind of like suspended and so close to the asteroids. And then secondly, seeing the 3 layers of space chess with those like clear pieces, that set itself is really beautiful. And just seeing like that just beautiful clear glass and then this beautiful asteroid field and like, this scene, I could just
I totally agree with you on this, Shereese. It was beautifully rendered. So major props to the visual department for how they put all that together. And you're right, the way that it went from like the delicate like space chess clear glass pieces to like the delicate asteroids suspended without moving is gorgeous.
This whole episode was gorgeous. This whole episode, every costume, the alien makeup. Yeah.
So Data gives us some clue as to the origin of this asteroid field, because Wesley's like, oh God, they never thought that it would happen here. So it's like, oh, there's a little mystery. And Data kind of indicates that there was some sort of final battle between two warring sides that resulted in the mutual destruction of like both sides, and that neither side thought that their final battle would take place here, wherever here is. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So we have a little mystery on our hands. And then poor Geordi walks in looking so dejected. And Wesley goes, uh-oh, he spent days putting together this like holographic program for this girl, and it must have not ended well. And I love when Data looks and he goes, uh-oh.
Yeah.
That's really cute.
That was really cute.
Very cute. But the episode like really kind of kicks up where on the bridge, a mysterious signal is being detected within the asteroid field. And they come across a Promelian battle cruiser. And they keep indicating that like, oh my God, like no one has seen these forever. The technology,
it's been 1,000 years.
The technology is so primitive. And before Captain Picard gives the date on it, he's like, well, what we see now is primitive. When they were cruising around the galaxy, humans were barely perfecting the mechanical clock. So it gives a time frame as to like how long this has been. And the signal emanating from the ship is over 1,000 years old, which is so, I love when you have a little.
And the ship looks amazing. So cool. Like it kind of, when they saw it from space, it looked like, to me from the front, it looked like a Klingon bird of prey.
100%.
But then when they turned to the side and you see kind of the back of the ship, I was like, oh no, wait, this is a totally different design. And then when they got into the ship, I was like, ooh, because I love seeing new ships and how it was like all dark and like powered down. And then I love the camera angles too when they were inside the ship. And I know we're skipping ahead a little bit because there's a little part I want to talk about who went to the ship and why. But the way they did the camera angles was so clever because you only had to see like a tiny little piece of the ship. So they didn't have to make an entire bridge with like all the details. They just needed to make a few pieces in the background that made it look really cool. And I think they did a great job.
They did do a stunning job. I mean, this entire episode is so strong from start to finish. You're right. Captain Picard does want to go to the ship to investigate without security sweeps first. Sir? That sounds like a really bad idea. I mean,
which is what Riker says. And for the first time, he's got a great idea when it comes to security. It took him 3.5 seasons, but he got there to say, wait a minute. I don't think the captain should go into this old derelict spaceship with like no security. That's not
God
a good
only
idea.
knows what could be in there. I mean, there were warring tribes. So you don't know like what kind of booby traps they could have had in there or God knows what. Anything. Also, this effing ship has been stuck here for 1,000 years. I mean, the sensors can't, in my opinion, I don't think the sensors can adequately scan the entire ship and pick up even if there's like a teeny tiny little breach. It's a 1,000-year-old ship that's been through battle. There could be little cracks and fissures and things that who knows. But they make this ship in a bottle analogy. And Picard is like, oh, it's a ship in a bottle. It's a ship in a bottle. Didn't anyone ever play with ships and bottles when they were boys? And Worf says, I never played with toys. And Data says,
of course he didn't.
I was never a boy.
I never was a boy. Yeah.
I thought that was so great. And Chief O'Brien fucking shoehorned in there going, I did. And I just wrote, thank you, Lieutenant Suckup. Like, which I love that.
Which is exactly what Riker was saying when he looked at him, right? And he was like, I did. I really did. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Lieutenant Suckup. Yeah. That's funny.
So as he beams over, Geordi is, heads over to 10 Forward and is picking Guinan's brain for advice on dating. And we have a little foreshadowing.
We see Guinan again. Yay!
Yeah, I know.
I love seeing her.
I know. And I love that she's sprinkled in a little bit. And as we get into later seasons, she becomes like just indispensable member of the crew. Yeah. She's got that great intuition. Troy secretly hates the hell out of her, because
she's the real ship's counselor.
Yeah. And Guinan says she's attracted to bald men, maybe because a bald man took care of Guinan in the past when she was hurting. And I was like, oh, this is such great foreshadowing to Time's Arrow when they're in San Francisco and it's 500 years in the past. Like, I loved all of that. I was like, oh, it's just like a wonderful little Easter egg.
Yep. That episode's going to come up in season 5 and it's one of my favorite episodes. It's a 2-parter. And it's when we see a little, it's a series finale and then the start of the next season. Yep. So, we're going to see a little bit of background about Guinan and what happened to her in the past. And it's going to be so great.
I know.
But yeah, I like that too. I like how she says the first thing I look at is a man's head and Geordi's like, yes, his mind. He has to be smart. And she's like, no, his physical head. I like men who are bald. It's like, like, wait, what? And they have this great little heart to heart where Geordi just pours his heart out. And he's like, if you give me any kind of electrical or engineering problem, I can fix it in a heartbeat. And I do feel like Geordi's kind of like a MacGyver in that way. I mean, I think Wesley's better because he can fix anything, anytime, anywhere.
Eclipsed by a 15-year-old.
Right. But like taking Wesley out of the equation, since he's technically not a commissioned officer. Yeah. Like Geordi's very much a MacGyver, figuring stuff out at the last second. And he's like, I could do anything. But when it comes to women, I'm totally clueless. And Guinan's like, you're doing fine with me. And he's like, well, but you're different. And she's like, no, you're different. Right.
Yeah,
and
you're relaxed.
Like, oh, yeah, you're not trying so hard. And I thought, one, I wanted to hear your opinion on that whole just be yourself advice and how that's worked for you in the past. And then versus like putting in effort. Cause, and then two,
it's a bit of a minefield.
And the second thing I was thinking is like, Geordi's really smart and really clever and really creative and really ambitious. And I wouldn't date him. So that was my second.
Well, why not? Like, now I need to know why.
I don't know why not, but he just doesn't feel like a romantic interest.
Yeah. I feel like Geordi is a mentor I could look up to and pick his brain and stuff. But yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, well, going back to your first part of that, I'm going to refer to one of my other favorite TV shows, The Office, where Dwight is trying to get Angela back. They had a breakup and he's still in love with her and trying to get back together with her. And one of the other characters, Phyllis, offers him some advice. She's like, you have to let her go. You just have to let her go and stop trying so hard. And then maybe she'll come back to you. Like once you stop trying so hard, kind of what Guinan says. And he goes, okay, great. I'm over her. Now, how do I get her back? It's like, that's the like double-edged sword. That's what it feels like when I was, very much out there dating and whatnot. People would be like, well, just don't try so hard or like, just stop looking. And then someone will show up. And I was like, great, I'm not looking now. So when is this person going to show up? That's what it felt like. It just felt like a double-edged sword. However, I being in the position where I am now, where I've been married for a few years, to my best friend. And there are times that we get on each other's nerves and stuff. I mean, that's just natural, but I cannot stress enough how important it is, at least for me, that you find yourself with someone that you can absolutely be yourself with. When you find yourself editing yourself, that's a problem. That's, and I mean, of course there are situations like, you can't be going out to dinner being like table for two, all right. Like that doesn't make much sense. If you did do that, then, maybe we have a different problem on our hands.
That's why my date didn't work out. Okay. Taking notes. Table for two.
Yeah.
Do. Oh, wait, where are you going? Hello. I thought we we haven't ordered yet. Hello.
Yeah, and he's going beep beep as he drives away. Yeah. So just be, yeah, I think Guinan's right. Like, you have to be yourself when you're trying so hard. I think there's a difference between putting effort into something
and trying to be someone you're not.
And trying to be someone you're not. Exactly.
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree. And I do think it takes, I personally think, although, you know, everybody take this with a grain of salt because I'm like literally the last person on the planet to give advice in this area. But I do personally think that putting in effort is important because it's important in any relationship, romantic or otherwise.
Totally.
Like, if you're going to make somebody else an important person in your life, you should put effort into your relationship. You need to spend time with them. You need to listen to them. Like, you need to actually try. And at the same time, you also shouldn't be trying to be somebody you're not, because that's exhausting.
Yeah.
And then if that person falls in love with the person you're pretending to be, you're going to be like jealous of yourself, because you're going to be like, yes, do you actually love me? Because I just made this other person up and you love that person. And what a terrible question to ask yourself every day.
Poor Geordi. Poor Geordi. Yeah, he can save the Enterprise 1,000 times, but he can't, you know, get a girl to have a Coco Nona with him. I feel bad for him.
Well, I mean, he could get her to have like 4, but not like a 5th one. she'll draw the line at some point.
He just stops ordering the 5th one because he knows that's the cutoff. He's like, ladies will have 4 with me, but they won't stay for the 5th.
And you know what? He actually says this later on in the episode. So this is jumping ahead a little bit again, but he says something to the computer when he's in the holodeck, and they're like, that file is not, he tries to access Leah Brahm's like personal logs.
Yes.
And then it's like, that's restricted because it's a personal log. And he's like, great, another woman who won't open up to me on the holodeck. And you're like, oh, Geordi.
He's got a whole list. Anyway, okay, well, now we've like totally like derailed, but let's get back. So Picard is on the bridge of the Promelian battlecruiser. It looks amazing. There are the remains of the crew members who died at their posts. And of course, Worf is like, honorable, you know, like that's it.
Yeah,
that's
the captain is sitting there.
The captain is sitting there
as a space mummy. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That was so cool. Like, that someone even conceived to have a mummy in a spaceship. I was like, interesting. And then I thought, would you become mummified in a spaceship? I don't know.
That's a really good question.
I didn't do a deep dive on that, but I did have that question. I was like, is that possible?
You know what?
But it was neat.
Here's my like take on it. For people to be mummified as they were in ancient Egypt, they'd have to be embalmed and a whole bunch of chemicals would have to be applied to like dry their bodies out and all this stuff. Yeah, exactly. To preserve them. Now, if you think about being in space, the vacuum of space can provide that sterility. However, that's not what the case was in the Promelian battlecruiser. It had breathable air, so much so that the crew of the Enterprise could, like, the away team could beam over and they didn't have to have any special equipment. It was all breathable. So I think that those bodies would have just broken down. They would have just broken down.
They would have been decomposed.
They would have just decomposed into nothing. They would not have stayed.
So we would have seen maybe bones.
Maybe a little,
I don't know, 1,000 years. Well, yeah, we have dinosaur bones, so we would have seen bones.
Yeah, we would have had bones, but even then, like those,
there's no erosion for the bones.
Yeah, so I think we would have had that. But yeah, the like preserved mummies, I think that would only happen if the like barrier to space had been broken and like space had been allowed to like get in and preserve.
But
them.
Even then, I feel like if space had gotten in, wouldn't the body have frozen?
They would have frozen and or flown out. Like it would have flown out exactly. So it's like there's some.
Yeah, if you're like a physicist or something, hit us up, info@tngpodcast.com, because we got questions.
Yeah, we need to talk to a physicist, a mummicist, and all these things.
We need a mummicist ASAP, because as a marine biologist and a microbiologist, we don't know the answer to this question.
We can only hypothesize. That's it. But okay, so while Captain Picard is gallivanting around this Promelian battlecruiser, Wesley detects that like there's like some little couple strange power distortions. Something isn't quite right, but it's not enough that it's like, uh-oh. And that's just like a quick little snippet telling us like, something is happening. And the captain and Data are able to pull up the captain's final recordings from over 1,000 years ago. And he wants the record to show that his crew died an admirable death, and he alone is responsible for the fate that befell them. He doesn't specify exactly what happened, but it wasn't just like a death in battle. And I had a few thoughts. One, considering they had to create a whole alien monster makeup just for like a grainy video, I was so blown away by, and it was so well done.
Thank you. Thank
Like,
you.
it was
That's
for
what
like a
I
shitty
thought.
video, and it looked
For a
amazing.
grainy video that was tiny. They put on a tiny little screen, a teeny tiny little viewer, and the makeup was amazing. And I was like, we've come so far from season one, where we've got whole giant people having close-ups of their trash Party City masks. And now we have this like incredibly beautiful monster makeup that you can even barely see, but you can tell it's awesome.
Oh, it's so stunning.
I was blown away by the space mummy. I was happy with that.
Yeah.
And then when they showed the original, like what it originally looked like, I was like, oh,
so good.
Oh my gosh.
So good. Number one. Number two, even just the technology, the way they pulled up the video, and it was 1,000 years old and still worked. I was like, oh God, I was just like, my nerd heart was exploding with happiness. Totally. And then also the mystery of like, what the fuck happened here? Because you guys didn't just blow each other up and everybody all died. It's like,
you literally died sitting in your chair.
Yes.
So how did you die?
What happened? So the captain's like, okay, I think we've seen everything we kind of need to see. We can have, some like historians come back and catalog all this and whatever. As soon as they're beamed back aboard, they try to leave, but immediately are met with like power drops, like 2% power drop, 5%, 10%. So it starts really, it really gets on a roll, and it renders the engines useless. And Captain Picard is like, I think we've been ensnared in the same booby trap that doomed the Promelian battle cruiser. And I was like, like that was the bum.
Totally. And in the observation lounge, when they're saying like options, Data points out that the Menthars, the people that the Promelians were battling, were renowned for their battle strategy because they were endlessly creative and innovative with their different techniques that they used in battle. So this could easily be one of their traps because they were always coming up with new creative ways to kill their enemies, which is kind of impressive and also sad that that's what they put their genius to. Whatever.
Yeah.
And so then Riker is like, yeah, that's great. Is there anything in the memory, in the records about this particular trap and how to get out of it? And Data's like, oh, no, there's not. He's just like, the Menthars probably invented this and it's amazing. And they do all these cool things. And he's like, okay, that's wonderful. Can you free us? No,
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. It's like, awesome. So this is probably a booby trap and we're all going to die like that ship.
100%.
Yes. Start setting the clock. And now we know there's 3 hours of like power left in the ship before the shields fail. And once they fail, all the crazy radiation is going to kill everybody in 30 minutes.
Yes.
So they've got 3 hours and 30 minutes before fatal death.
Okay. So backing up just a tiny bit, Geordi's trying to figure out, the problem. And he comes across Leah Brom's journal entries on the design of the ship's warp core. And he's like, okay, maybe I can pull her knowledge that's cataloged in the ship's computer and kind of have her be like my teammate, which I was like, that's very clever. I love that. And then the next thing we see is Dr. Crusher on the bridge briefing Captain Picard. She has this plan on how to contain the crew as safely as possible. She's like, cut power to every other deck and have everybody be on like odd number decks. And then she says the radiation will reach fatal levels 30 minutes after the shields fail. And I had 2 thoughts on this. One, it's interesting to me that in the 24th century, there still isn't a cure for radiation poisoning, which we currently have no cure for. So it's like, I think it's cool that there are some illnesses and issues like this that like maybe just never go away. And I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting.
It makes it more realistic. Yeah.
And then my second thought in all caps is, why are you having this meeting in front of the staff out in the open? That's what the observation lounge and the ready room are for. Do not in the middle of the bridge while everyone's frantically working going, well, 30 minutes after the shields are down, everybody, there's nothing we can do, that's going to reach fatal levels of radiation. So, and I was like, oh, Beverly, if you're just going to talk out in the open, you could have just calmed him from like sick bay. Cause it's not really where you're supposed to be.
Number one. What are you doing here?
Yeah. And number 2, out in the open. Come on. Might as well just put this on like the ship-wide announcement. Dear God. I thought that was terrible. All right. But whatever. That was just an aside. So back to Geordi. He's dreaming up this method for working more closely with Leah Brahms. And he decides to recreate the design studio where the engines were created on Utopia Planitia. And they're, she being Leah Brahms appears in the holodeck. And Geordi's like, I don't remember asking the computer to like create the simulation. And the computer, do you remember, is like, oh, correction, like you asked for XYZ parameters to work with Leah Brahms, so it was just best to like create her as a holographic image. And he's like, well, okay. And they start having this like, science mumbo jumbo, to start coming up with solutions. And she's pretty
robotic.
Yeah, she's very, thank you. I was like,
she's just like the computer.
Very much like that. And so, Geordi, this isn't the time. But he's like, all right, computer, cross-reference her journals, her speeches, etc., to create this more realistic facsimile. And as soon as the computer does that.
But he does do that after, just to point out that the two of them, basically he's differentiating between saying computer, meaning the enterprise computer, and Leah, meaning like her, right? To get different answers. So sometimes he's saying computer, do this. And he's like, Leah, do that, and asking questions. And then they come to something that he thinks might be a really good solution. So he's like, oh my gosh, I think we got it. I think this is going to work. Woo! And he's like cheering on. And he looks over at Leah Brahms and she's just like blank face.
Yes, you're
and he's
right.
like, come on, like high five. Like, no, like team spirit. No. And that's when he's like, all right, we added some personality in here because I'm sitting here jumping up and dancing all by myself. And she's just standing there staring off into space.
While a woman just stares at you. Again.
Exactly. So then he's like, all right, let's pull together every record you have of her to try to make a personality. And so he has the computer generate a personality so he can work with someone who's a little more like a teammate.
Yes.
Which was kind of fun. And also bleeds into the conversation you and I had about holoethics and recreating people who you know or don't know on the holodeck to interact with them. So,
well, and I think
cool technology and a little
bit creepy, and it's going to come back and bite him in the ass in a later episode, and it's going to be so cringy and so delicious to watch. Where you're like, oh, so awesome. I'm sad for you, but also you kind of deserve this, dude. That you really crossed the line. So as soon as the computer finishes putting in her personality, did you notice? I'm going to play it for you right now. Did you notice this 1989 love music?
Yep, that's it. That's really setting the mood right there. You can really see like the wind blowing in her hair as he stares.
No, that's one place where I feel like the holodeck could have like put in like more breeze to have her hair blowing.
What I actually loved about this scene when the personality gets installed, I love the actress, how she becomes animated. Like she kind of takes a breath and like blinks her eyes and looks around, and you're like, you can really see her coming to life. Even though she was literally just standing there 2 seconds ago. Like she hasn't really moved, but the way she did that totally sold me that now she's a different person. And she turns slowly. She looks at Geordi and she just smiles. And then he's just like, Dr. Brahms or whatever. And she's like, Geordi, it's me. It's Leah. Like somehow the computer made her personality like that Geordi's best friend and also super flirtatious with Geordi. And I was like, how did the computer even do that? And why did it do that? I had so many questions.
Yes.
What would the computer remake me like if it was based on my conferences? I'm sure it would not be flirtatious.
No, right? And like I've presented some data at some conferences, and you better believe it's just like, so these were the methods, this is how we ran it, these were the findings, right? Like it wasn't like and
Geordi,
then I don't know, like hey, Dr. So-and-so, so happy to see you. Aren't you happy to see me? Yeah, there was none of that. Okay, so now Leah Brahms and Geordi are having like sexy intellectual screaming match. And they're like, it can't be done. And then they kind of look at each other and go, you're good. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is a bad idea, Geordi. You are vulnerable. No one is really going to blame you, but you need to step back.
And I did say be yourself, I guess, but with some effort. But wow, screaming matches that they went like to married couples real quick, right? From like flirting to dating to married, all in one scene.
But I will say, I think it's more like passionate dating couple, where it's like you see in the movies those couples that like have screaming matches and then immediately cut to like ravaging each other. But I feel like married couples, not so much. Like you scream at each other and then you come back in a couple hours and go, all right, well, let's talk about what happened just now. But there isn't like, you don't immediately jump to like bedroom makeup. Yes, the bedroom and the saxophone. Yeah, it's but so they are able to figure out that there is some sort of radiation bleed out that's emanating from these asteroids, and there are hundreds of thousands of them. So there's no way to just knock out like the 2 generators and like then you're fine. And so they're like, okay, well, shoot, maybe we can like possibly get out of this asteroid field if we turn over the ship to the computer. And Geordi's like scratching his head trying to figure this out. And then Leah, oh dear God, comes up behind him and gives him a back rub. And I was like, oh, I basically put like my paws in front of my face and went, no. I didn't like
Coco, no. And he's just like, don't do that. And she's like, I thought it would feel good. And he's like, I don't want to feel good right now. I need to save the ship. Computer.
This is giving me acid reflux. I don't want to see this. Yeah.
But I mean, it was honestly, compared to the opening scene of this episode, the best date that Geordi's ever had.
True. That's true.
So
it's very like, natural and flowing.
Him a bone. It's very natural.
And Geordi can never be satisfied with a woman who doesn't match his intellect.
Yeah.
Not ever. True. And so Leah Brahms is his equal in this part. And she even says like, you know, the problem with ship's engineer or the problem with the ship's designers is that we never get to get out into space. And Geordi's like, yes, as the chief engineer, I feel like we should have more of a hand in the construction of our ship. Yeah. So it's like they have a give and take and it's working well. And it's
like
all
a complementary skill set.
And it's just all lies. It's just all fake. And Geordi, please don't keep it. Just anyway. So they run a bunch of simulations and sometimes the Enterprise makes it out and sometimes it doesn't. And Geordi's like, aha, what if we turn this whole thing on its head? One tiny microsecond burst of power and then shut the whole thing down and coast out. Because what's happening with this asteroid field trap is it is draining whatever power you put out. So your output energy is drained in equal measure. So if you have no output, and this is a solution that the Enterprise comes up with a couple of times, where they just sort of coast their way out. And it's like, okay, you know, I think it's the second time we've seen it. But yeah, so that's what they decide to do. And then Shereese, I don't know how you felt about this moment, but Captain Picard relieves Wesley and will pilot the ship out. And he's like, thank you, Commander. You have done your job. And now it is time for me to do mine. And having Picard take the con, I got like chills. I was like, oh, this is Patrick Stewart with the gravitas that only Patrick Stewart can like carry. I was loving it so much.
When I saw that, my question was, so at this point, by the way, there's 12 minutes before the shields fail and everyone's going to die. So we have 12 minutes.
Always like this.
And Picard tells Riker, yes, I'm going to pilot the ship out. I mean, he doesn't even tell him. He's just like, I'm going to take care of it. It's my turn.
Yeah.
And then relieves Wesley and he flies the ship out. And I think it's kind of like Captain goes down with the ship type deal, or if anything goes wrong, it's my fault type deal. I'm not really sure.
And then Picard uses the final large asteroid, Data, ever helpful. He's basically like C-3PO when he's like, the odds of us, escaping this asteroid field are 732,000 to 1. And Han Solo goes, never tell me the odds. That's basically what Data was like, where he said, because of like a couple of unforeseen things, we have lost the inertia to get us fully out. So we now cannot escape. And I love that Picard just goes, thank you, Data. Like, shut up, Data. And he uses that large asteroid to slingshot them out of the asteroid field. And again, loved the visuals on that. Loved it. So and cool. The music was like, bum, 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 bum. Like they've made it out like, oh,
yeah. And Riker's like, computer, shut down all notifications of like dead levels.
Yes.
Like, don't tell us when death is happening. Don't tell us anymore. Just shut up. And I was like, hey, why don't they do that all the time? Yep. Like when he's like, we realize we could die any second. We don't need the countdown minute by minute. Stop talking.
Yes.
Like, let us focus. And I was like, that's really smart.
Doo-doo. 2 minutes to fatal exposure. I don't need to hear that right now.
Yeah. Cause then he's going to be like 75 seconds, 60 seconds, 40 seconds. Like, no,
computer off.
Don't need to
just computer off. So they make it out and Picard is like, okay, let's blow up the Promelian battlecruiser so that it doesn't bother anyone ever again. Going back to your statement a few moments ago, I think the reason that Captain took the con is kind of like you said, Captain goes down with the ship, but I think the responsibility to get them out ultimately lies with him. And it's because of Picard that they went onto the Promelian battlecruiser, that they were stuck there poking around in the first place. If it wouldn't have been for him, they probably would have just zapped right through and wouldn't have had an issue. So I think it was because of him, just as the Promethean captain said,
right.
It's my fault that we're here. And, Captain tried a couple things. He tried phasing, hitting the asteroids with the phaser, and it took a big energy hit for the Enterprise to do that. And it resulted in nothing happening. And he was like, shit, okay, like I've just drained our power even more, and it got nothing done. So now they're out and everything is fine. And Geordi is saying a very sexy and sappy goodbye to Leah. And she goes, it's me, Geordi. Every time, it's so creepy. I want to gag. Every time you look at the ship, you're looking at me. Every time you touch the ship, you're touching me. And knowing what happens with Leah Brahms in a future episode, I felt so effing uncomfortable.
Watching this for the first time, you don't know that Leah Brahms comes back in a second episode. Yeah. So you're just like, okay, this is just like a one-off thing.
It's kind of just a creepy, sappy goodbye.
It wouldn't be creepy if this wasn't a holodeck generated facsimile of a real person. If this was a real person, this would be a really sweet scene.
Yes. Yeah.
If it was like a visiting scientist and then she was getting on her shuttle and going somewhere else, it would be a really sweet scene.
Yeah. Agreed.
So from that perspective, it's like very sweet. They have a kiss and he says goodbye. But because it's a holodeck generated like facsimile of a real person who exists, that's what makes it kind of creepy. So they kiss and he's just like, that was wonderful. And I kind of felt like, well, at least Geordi had a win. He had a good date. And then I also felt like, because I do know the next episode, I was like, yeah, whatever you get, you kind of earned it.
Yeah. Yep. Also, maybe just delete program. Just delete the program. Don't leave a trace. Geordi. This is just so.
I mean, I guess he wouldn't even think of that, right? He just wouldn't even. He wouldn't even think to be like, let me like clean up my tracks because I did something wrong. Because he doesn't think he did anything wrong either. Yeah. He's just like, whatever. I just use this. Like, it's not a big deal.
It's like, dude, stash the pornography like way in the back. Okay, like
that's how I feel. Yeah,
don't how I feel about that out.
Don't put it on the coffee table. Don't put it on the bookshelf. Maybe slip it somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe like behind a hidden panel. I don't know. I'm just saying. But
wall safe. You don't keep any cash, just stacks of porn. Yeah.
I'm sure someone somewhere out there has got something like that. But I think that the staging of the first awkward date was the perfect lead-in to like Geordi is feeling vulnerable. He's had multiple rejections. Even though it's not explicitly stated, but his actions kind of show like, yep, I've heard this all before. I've heard the rejection before. And for him to have such an effortless connection with this like mega brained woman is like everything he needs. And it's all a lie. And it's just, Geordi, it's so sad. Please go talk to Guinan some more or something.
I know.
I don't know what to tell you, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that's where this episode wraps up. Do you have any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
I cannot wait for the part 2 of this episode. So here's a little foreshadowing for those of you who haven't, if you're listening, you haven't actually seen the next episode yet, which is probably no one, because a lot of people have seen these shows a lot of times who listen to our show. The real Leah Brahms comes to the ship and discovers this particular program and is like, what now?
Yeah.
And it's just like, that episode, you're just like, yep, what's going to happen now? You just want to get your popcorn out and be like,
yep.
You go talk to Geordi.
Yeah.
But so far, like this episode was just great. Like I said, I forgot about the Promelians and all of that. I just remember the Geordi Brahms, like he finally has some kind of confidence and maybe he can take this into the real world and run with it with a real person who he's not recreating. I don't know. What were your final thoughts?
My final thoughts are similar to yours. I can't wait for the story arc to pick up later. I don't remember off the top of my head which season it is, but it's in either the rest of season 3 or season 4. It's fairly soon. And without giving away a lot of spoilers, the real Dr. Leah Brahms is absolutely nothing like
nothing at all like this sultry, sexy
Leah Brahms. And Geordi absolutely has to eat a shit ton of crow. And it's so painful, but also you fucking deserve that. So, anyway, Shereese, this has been a ton of fun. Next week, we're talking season 3, episode 7, The Enemy. Can't wait to break that one down with you too. We'll see you next week, everyone.
Bye. Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.